All right. Welcome. So, this is my first, talking video. I don't really know what I'm going to call these. So far, this one, I'm just going to go without a script, I think, because I just want to be able to, get a real intro so you kind of know who I am a little bit. I mean, most of you watching this probably know me from real life, but if you don't, I'm Gabriel, and I love comics. I'm a huge nerd. So what this is, I guess, is I'm gonna start introducing some topics onto the channel, which I will further elaborate on. And I'm still gonna try to post short films and stuff on here too, and we'll just see where everything goes. And don't mind the background footage. If you like it, cool. If you don't, it doesn't matter. It's not important to the video. It's just background footage. Basically, comics have been around me for a really long time. My dad was not the biggest reader of comics or anything, but back in the 80s, after Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles blew up, there was a point in time where a lot of people were trying to collect those weird indie comedy kind of comics, because now people with the first print editions of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they could sell them back and make a ton of money, tons of money. And so everybody was trying to jump on that bandwagon. My dad collected things like Boris the Bear. He had the first print edition of Watchmen, which, a lot of people are like, oh, first print edition, but that doesn't actually mean much with Watchmen. That's a story for another time, though. Anyway, so when I was about 12 years old, he gave me this box of all these comics he collected, right? You'd have your occasional Superman comic or Shazam or something, but most of it was these weird indie comics. And so Watchmen was... No, Boris the Bear was the first one I read. That was funny, but it confused me. I mean, there was some adult humor I didn't really get at the time, and it was just weird in general. It was so weird. I think it still inspires me to the day. To today, it's so funny. But they also made a lot of meta jokes about comics, talking about DC's Crisis on Infinite Earths and stuff like that. And at the time, I would just get confused. I had no clue what they were talking about. But I wanted to read more stuff like that. So I started reading all the DC books in his collection, and especially Watchmen. Now, technically, that's its own separate thing, but published by DC. And I'm sure a lot of people who are familiar with comics can instantly recognize, Watchmen. But that was the first time I was really introduced to anything that really kind of shook me. I didn't entirely get it at the time. It's a very difficult book. It's very complex. It's easy to read, right? It's easy to be entertained by for a lot of people, but to really get into it, there's a lot of unpacking. There's a lot to the story going on, beneath the surface. And of course, as a 12-year-old, I didn't really get all the metaphors and allegories or all the, political commentary. So I just thought, wow, cool superheroes. And that's really what got me into it, ironically. Because Watchmen was actually kind of a way to go against the grain and say superheroes were somewhat childish, and it was a weird idea to have people dress up and commit acts of violence as a form of justice, which, yeah, in real life. I still love comics. I don't care if that's a weird idea in real life. But, so eventually, I kind of fell off. I loved the idea. I would watch YouTube videos about it and stuff like that, but I didn't have the money for it. it was just not something I could go out of my way for. Until eventually I made these friends who, you know, they were super into Marvel. I was a fan of DC, even though, the movies at the time were pretty, just not there yet. Let's just say that. But so I purposely went on YouTube and all that stuff just to learn about the Marvel Universe so I could keep up with them. In conversation and stuff, they talk about Marvel and Star Wars a lot. Star Wars, I knew. I could hold myself. But Marvel, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I guess Spider-Man's a thing. But I love the movies. So eventually I would get comics here and there when I had cash. Until I finally got a job. My first job was at this little seafood style-ish restaurant. It was pretty beachy, pretty chill. I was like a busboy. And I didn't really have anywhere to spend my money. I was a dumb teenager. I didn't drive. I didn't do any of that. So I didn't have to save for gas money or anything. So every time me and my friends would go out, I'd pay for most of the stuff. Because I made surprisingly good tip money. And had no bills to pay or anything. But anyway, at this point in time, I was kind of going through a lot. There was, in my past, let's say, my situation with my family was incredibly complicated, and still is. But then I had, problems with some bullying and things like that in high school. Just not really fitting in very well. I never did. I suffer from Asperger's and many other issues. But, I eventually bought the DC Comics app, which, in my opinion, unbeatable. You have thousands of comics for $10 a month. If you read 1.5 comics per month, or I guess 2.5 comics per month, you basically make up the price of that whole month. If you went out and bought, a single issue, right now it's anywhere from $4 to $7. You know what I mean? And sometimes even $11. I've seen some of those, which is kind of ridiculous. So I do prefer the physical copy, but the digital is fine. I'm not I'm not weird about it. I just, it's nice to have it in your hand. It makes it easier to kind of see. But thousands of comics for $10 a month, that's crazy. So I just started reading and reading and reading. It was sort of an escape from everything going on, right? I could, all my flaws and failures and all the stuff going on around me, my parents sucked. A lot sometimes. Most of the time. But I could read Superman and feel some more hope, or I could read The Flash and be able to run away at lightning speed. It was a nice way for me to feel like a different person, I guess. And it really helped me emulate some of these better traits I found. I was like, I want to be like that. I admire that. Especially with characters like Batman and Superman. And eventually that lent itself to using the Marvel app too, right? I wanted to keep up, so I started paying for that too. And again, same idea, really, really worth it. And Daredevil instantly became one of my favorite characters. I watched the Netflix show, and it was so good. I immediately went to the comics, read 2 whole runs. And if you're not familiar with runs, it's basically just one writer's time on a book. One, I guess, storyline with multiple small arcs. Comics are a little confusing. But basically, Daredevil became one of my favorites. And I saw this blind man who still got up and fought. And it wasn't always the virtues that were helpful to me. A big part of it too was like their flaws. Daredevil, for example, shares a lot of flaws with me. I think he's pretty generally depressed, and I don't have this, but I do have some serious guilt issues. He has a Catholic guilt that really helps amplify some of his problems and can make him isolate himself. Sometimes he seems to have anxiety, like in Chip Zdarsky's run. He has a complete anxiety attack on the floor when, at this point in time, he became a parole officer, and after being injured, he was, he was hit by a truck or a van. I can't remember. But he was still recovering. But because he was itching to get back to be Daredevil again, which is also sort of an addiction symptom. He's got a lot of issues, but he was itching so bad he was going out there when his senses weren't right. And he accidentally killed a man. And that the brother of that man he killed was his what's the word? Person that he was paroling. I can't think of the word. But, so when he learned this, he had an anxiety attack. He didn't know how to handle himself. He didn't know how to feel about himself. And the whole story was him coming to accept himself as sort of a person. He really struggled with accepting who he was, and accepting his place in the world, because his Catholic guilt kind of made it seem like if you made a mistake, you're going to hell. You're a bad person. And I mean, yeah, he dresses as the devil, which is a whole can of worms. But he's very, very into his religious philosophy. And he even inspired me to start working out again. I mean, through periods of my life, I would always work out. But the time that I've been like really getting into it was because of Daredevil and Batman. And Daredevil, seeing him getting kicked down so much, his girl or friend and fiance is killed, and his situation with his mental state gets worse and worse, but he still rises to the challenge when he needs to. That really inspired me, and I wanted to be like that. And Batman, I have a story about that one. I know this video is kind of rambly, but Batman's especially important. I'm actually getting a tattoo soon, or trying to. Tattoos are scary. But so there's a long period of time where I was suffering with a lot of mental illnesses all at once, and I still am, but the symptoms have been severely reduced for the most part. And I didn't know how to handle it, so often I was suicidal. And basically because of that, I did a lot of stupid things and thought in very cynical ways. And eventually, I attempted multiple times, but there was one specific time during my senior year, during the beginning of my senior year in high school, I attempted because of some crazy goings on. That's a whole story in and of itself. And, I was taken to the hospital, medicated, all that. But this one memory really stuck with me. After that, my dad took me home, and, we kind of avoided talking about it, mostly. And so I was still in my hospital clothes, but we just sat on the couch, and I remember seeing some YouTube review of this animated Batman movie, Mask of the Phantasm. I hadn't seen it. I had seen some of the other Batman the Animated Series stuff, but not this movie. And so I just picked it. I just picked it out of nowhere. And we watched it, and that movie brought me to tears. I remember looking away from my dad so he didn't see, and I still don't talk to him about it. It wasn't really about sharing it with my dad, which is a little sad, but what it was about was sharing this memory with myself, with Batman. I was able to empathize with this character it was about a young, inexperienced Batman falling in love and having his heart broken, right? I don't want to spoil it because it's one of my favorite movies of all time. But I remember just feeling like I could do it. I know who I am. I'm like this. I'm like this Batman. I don't need to hurt myself anymore. And so, over this scar on my wrist, I'm going to get the bat symbol just for that memory. So when I look at it, I can say, I'm strong enough. I'm good enough. And I can really be at peace with myself. And, comics have always sort of done that for me. Comic characters, and especially recent shows like Peacemaker or like the aforementioned Daredevil, mainly those two. And I mean, I know a lot of superhero media is kind of silly and kind of ridiculous. I mean, don't get me wrong. I also love just regular movies and regular books and stuff like that too. And I can definitely lay down 1,000 criticisms of Marvel movies. And DC movies, don't even get me started. There's some great ones, but jeez. So, oh my god. But all in all, there's just something about it that's magical, that really connects to people in all these crazy ways. I mean, I know people with, a crazy thing too. Spider-Man's like the biggest superhero ever, basically. Besides, I guess, Superman and Batman. They're all kind of on the same level now. But it's crazy to me that Spider-Man has changed culture. I mean, before all this, nobody would know the term multiverse. Now that's like normal to say. Now that's normal to say because of No Way Home and Spider-Verse. And now there's Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness coming out at the time of this recording. It's just crazy to me how much we've changed and grown as a culture because of superhero movies. And again, I could lay 1,000 criticisms on Marvel movies, but at least right now, I don't really want to. I just want to say I love comics and comic book movies, and they're powerful. I think everybody has their niche. My favorites are like Logan or the Dark Knight movies, or the Suicide Squad, not the 2021, not 2016. And I just think they're really worth our time, and I can't wait to see where they go from here. And so, like I said at the beginning, this is just my first, I guess, commentary kind of video where I'm just going to be talking about things that have meaning to me. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Have a great one.